doing some really important work with inferring in our mini lessons, haven't we? And we know that when we infer, we use clues from the text, the author, and we combine it with our scheme of things we already know. And when we put those two things together, we make an inference. Okay? So things we read, things we know, helps us to infer. So what we're going to do today is we're going to read a story called The Lonely Giant. This is a book about a lonely giant, picture, and an old woman who lives in this cottage. And the giant is lonely, and he's trying to get this woman's attention. But he doesn't do it in a very appropriate way. Okay? You're going to read to find out what he does to try to get her attention and why you think it doesn't work. Okay? But before we read, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at a couple of tricky words that you might find as you read. So would you please turn to page 4 in the text? There's going to be a word at the top of the page that starts with a K. It doesn't make a K sound. Let's see if we can find that word at the top that starts with a K. Point to it with your finger. Does anybody think they might be able to tell what that word is? It starts with a K, but it doesn't say K. It's a silent K. You think they can figure out that word? What do you think, Leah? Knitting. That's the word knitting. Sometimes K's at the beginning of the word are silent, and this is one of those words, okay? The woman in the story is going to be knitting with some needles, some big needles to make blankets and things like that, and her needles are going to make noises. They're going to say clickety-clack, clickety-clack, okay? Now I'd like you to turn to page 6 and ask you to look for the word thrust. What two letters do you think you might see at the beginning of thrust? What two letters? T-H, make that sound. Can you find the word thrust in the text? Thrust is a word that means kind of to shove something through. You see how the giant in the picture is sort of shoving his head through the window? The author's using a more powerful word, and he's using the word thrust. That means to shove it through, okay? Now I want you to look for the word great. Find the word great in the text on page 6. You see it? It starts with gr. That word is different than the word giant, isn't it? This word starts with gr. Giant starts with a G too, but it doesn't look like great. So when you come to that word, make sure you're reading great. And if you see giant, make sure you're reading giant.
Yeah,
okay?
you can make them
Yeah, they could be very tricky.
Tricky because it sounds like the G, but it's
Exactly.
It's like a,
I'm going to ask you to go back to the beginning, to turn back to page 2. I just want you to read these very first 2 pages, this one and this one. And then I'm going to ask you to stop, and I'm going to show you how I'm doing some inferring based on what I read. So go ahead and start at the beginning and stop when you get to the end of that sentence. I'm going to show you how I would infer based on the things we just read, okay? I'm going to use our little formula here. I read that the giant is watching the old woman through the window. He's just kind of peeking in on her. And my schema tells me that when I'm lonely, I kind of feel by myself. I'd like to have someone with me, so I'm not alone anymore. So I infer that the giant wants to be friends with the woman, okay? That's what I infer. What I ask you to do next is I want you to read until you get to the post-it, the yellow post-it in your book. When you get there, you can stop reading, and I want you to think about an inference that you could make, and we'll talk about it together, okay? So go ahead and read to the next post-it, and we'll talk about what you infer.
could your frog knitting?
The giant washed that he could. Which word do you think might have been? Yeah, let's look at that one a little closer.
Wished.
Oh, does that make more sense? Giant. Does this look like giant? Let's be careful now because we said it was going to look a lot like giant. Can you go back here and read? Let's do a little bit of inferring, okay? Using the things we know and the text clues that the author left us. first of all, let's talk about what we read. What did you read? What are all the things that the giant was doing to try to get the woman's attention? What kinds of things was the giant doing, Liam?
Putting his head.
Putting his head through the window. What else?
Putting his neck.
Putting his neck through the window. What else?
Putting his giant foot in the window.
Yeah, he was trying to get her attention in all the wrong ways, wasn't he? Let's think about this, what we know. What do we know about when we're trying to get somebody's attention? How does that feel when the person isn't really noticing you? How does that feel when you're trying to get someone to listen to you and they don't really notice? Merrick, what do you think? How does that feel?
Would make me mad.
Yeah, it makes us a little mad, right? Do you think the giant's starting to feel angry?
Yeah.
Can we infer, how else do you think the giant might be starting to feel? Think about what he's doing, what we read, and what you know about when that happens to you. What do you think? How do you think he's starting to feel?
He's feeling sad because the little old woman won't pay attention.
He's probably feeling sad, maybe a little frustrated, right? How do you think the woman's starting to feel? What do you think?
Angry.
She might be a little angry. Do you think she wants him to keep shoving things through the windows? Not really sweeter. Okay, let's go ahead and read to the next post-it, and we'll do some more.